Hello all. In this video we will discuss static and dynamic chain. So when you think of a static chain, a statically scoped language makes use of static chain so that it can access non-local variables within the program. Basically, a static chain consists of one or more static links or static pointers. With every subroutine or a procedure, there is a static link. Now understand what is static link. This static link always points to the static parent of that subroutine. So imagine if procedure Q is defined within procedure P. Then procedure P is said to be the static parent of procedure Q. As Q is defined in P, we will say that procedure P is the static parent of procedure Q. On a similar note, we have a dynamic chain also, which is used by dynamically scoped language. A dynamically scoped language makes use of dynamic chain for the same purpose, like give access to non-local variables within the program. A dynamic chain consists of one or more dynamic links or dynamic pointers. Associated with every subroutine or a procedure stack frame, there is a dynamic link. This dynamic link always points to the dynamic parent of that subroutine. So we'll see what is a dynamic parent of a subroutine. So imagine if procedure Q is directly called by procedure P. That is, if procedure P calls procedure Q, then procedure P is said to be the dynamic parent of procedure Q. As P calls Q, P will be the dynamic parent of Q. So let's see an example. So suppose consider the given nesting of subroutines shown on the left hand side. So that is over here, right? Here. This is the nesting which is shown over here on the left side. Okay. As you can see, A is the outermost procedure. B and E are defined in A. C and D are defined in B. Okay. So we have three levels of nesting. At level 1, we have procedure A. Then at level 2, we have procedure B and E. And then at level 3, we have procedure C and D. There are three levels of nesting. Okay. Then this is what is given to us. Assume that the calling sequence is A, E, B, D, C. That means A has called E, E has called B, B has called D, and D has called C. Right? Then the contents of the runtime stack. So this is our runtime stack. This is shown over here. The question is draw static and dynamic links. Draw static and dynamic. So what I'll do is I'll draw static links or static chain, I would say, because collection of static links would be a static chain. So I'll draw static chain on the left side and then a dynamic chain on the right side. Okay. Now we know, let's first think of a static chain. We will first identify what is a static link for procedure A. Procedure A is the first procedure. Okay. Now the static link for A would be nil. And why it is nil? Because A is not defined in any procedure. A is the outermost procedure. Outermost procedure. Right? A is what? Outermost procedure. Hence, the static link for A is nil. Static link for A is nil. Then we think of E. You can see that E is defined in A. E is defined in A. Since E is defined in A, static link for E would point to static parent, and static parent of E would be A, because E is defined in A. So A is the static parent of E. So the static link for E would point to A. Similarly for B, as we know that B is also defined in A, so the static parent for B is also A. So static link for B would point to A, right? Because B is defined in A. So static link always points to static parent. Static parent for B is A. So static link for B will point to A. Then we come to D. We see that D is defined in B. D is defined in B. So B is the static parent of D. Hence the static link for D will point to static parent, which is B. Similarly for C, you can see that it is defined in B. So B is the static parent of C. Hence the static link for C will point to B. Okay. So this collection of these static links will form what? A static chain. Okay. Likewise, let's think of a dynamic chain. A dynamic chain consists of dynamic links. Now with every stack frame we have a dynamic link. Okay, so let's think of what is the dynamic link for A. The dynamic link for A is nil, and the reason is A is the first procedure called. No one calls A. You can see over here, this is the calling sequence which is given to us. No one calls A. A is the first procedure called. So the dynamic parent for A is not there, so it is nil. Then the next thing is very straightforward. E is called by A. E is called by A. So the dynamic link for E would point to A, because E is called by A. So A is the dynamic parent of E. So dynamic link for E will point to A. Similarly, B is called by C. Sorry, B is called by E. Right? B is called by procedure E. So E is the dynamic parent of B. So the dynamic link for B will point to dynamic parent of B, which is E. Then we see that D is called by B. D is called by B. Hence, the dynamic parent for D is B. So dynamic link for D will point to its dynamic parent, and dynamic parent for D happens to be B. Likewise, C is called by D. So D is the dynamic parent of C. Hence the dynamic link for C will point to its dynamic parent, which is procedure D. Okay. So these are the dynamic links we have, and the collection of these dynamic